Welcome to the Top Order podcast. We've got a lot of cricket to talk about again. New Zealand, England. We're going to talk a bit of Devon, Conway, a bit of Daryl Mitchell, Trent Boult. What does England's bowling lineup look like for that World Cup? Liam Livingstone stepping up in the top order. Harry Brook's lifeline from Matthew Mott. We'll also talk South Africa, Australia. Another concussion has benefited Marnus Labuschagne. We've got Warner asked to step up, and he has. We'll also cover some Asia Cup as well. All coming up on the Top Order podcast. Stay tuned. Well, boys, Baldy not here this evening, so I've actually got the headphones on, which really aids the intro, actually. I think I've learnt a tip there after 4 years.
You smashed the intro today.
I can hear the music and I know where the cues are. I've just figured out that I actually spent all my time trying to listen for Baldy's headphones rather than knowing where the cue's coming. But look, it seems a little bit Groundhog Day, to be honest. We're sort of a little bit further into this bilateral, what's the plural of bilateral series all around the world? I don't know, but there seems to be cricket on every single television around the world at the moment in the lead up to the World Cup. Starts on the 5th of October, the opening game, of course, a rematch of that 2019 final, England-New Zealand.
The less said about that, the better.
Well,
I don't know if I'm ready for wall-to-wall coverage of those replays again.
Well, yes, by the barest of margins. But look, we'll talk a little bit about this one-day international series, which is, look, I think giving both of the teams some questions to answer. I know New Zealand's squad has now been named. Last week we talked obviously about Kane Williamson being confirmed that he was going to be in the squad, but they'd not named the 15. And
spent a lot of time debating what Finn Allen's role would
exactly.
be.
It looks like he'll be. Yeah, it looks like he'll be there probably as a travelling reserve. You would have thought. But let's talk a little bit about New Zealand, England, and then we'll come on to South Africa, Australia, and a little bit of Asia Cup as well. So let's start, I suppose, with that New Zealand batting lineup. I've got to admit, I'm pretty scared of Daryl Mitchell. He looks in imperious form at the moment. But yeah, Conway and Mitchell, good partnership in game one. Will Young's got a little bit of cricket as well. What are your thoughts, I guess, on the way that New Zealand top order is shaping up, Stuart, and probably Raj as well?
Yeah, I think for me, watching Conway and Mitchell bat in that first innings sort of gave me... Yeah, I mean, I put in our show notes. I mean, we got so excited about Kane last week and talked about him such an important player. I look at that lineup and think, like, Phillips is sort of ready to hit his prime and go in to be a massive player for the World Cup. And obviously, Latham is really skilled at playing spin and things. But actually, like, are Mitchell and Conway the most important players in our lineup? Because when you look at it, normally you think the keys to your one-day side are an opener. They probably are a 3 or 4. That's where it looks like Mitchell's going to be slotting in. He's got the, Conway we know. We've talked about both of these two guys for the past 12 months and about how good they're going. But I think Mitchell, what I like about him is just that he can change tempos very, very quickly. And I don't know, I feel like, yeah, maybe they're the key to our World Cup success.
He's such an unassuming bat as well, Daryl Mitchell. But everything that he's been asked to do, he has delivered on. He's played well. Just looking at that opening when he opened in the 2020 World Cup, he did more than his required workload there, and I think that he's able to do it here again. I know we're talking about. Are we going to start talking about who didn't make it with Finn Allen?
Well, I think we can in terms of Will Young. I think Will Young basically has, like, they've obviously decided Will Young is our option to open, and they've gone. I mean, they sort of talked about it a little bit in the press conference. Gary Stead sort of just talked about that they think Will is the right person for the job. Is basically the
playing spin as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you think about it? I mean, I know there was a lot of back and forth on our Slack channel about Finn, and I can, from my point of view, I can completely understand that he hasn't taken his chances. What's interesting to me and sort of bizarre about all this is that he was given 18 months basically in this role, and then at the last hurdle they've said, okay, now you're not, like, we've shown confidence in you to 18 months and now you're not the one-day opener. Whereas Will Young's been around, like, he could have been the one that they picked all the way through. But yeah, that's probably the most surprising part about it for me.
I was just under the impression that he would have sort of a long leash, a long lead there to keep playing the way he wanted to play to see if he could be successful. He has struggled a little bit with that. That's quite obvious to say there if you look at his numbers. Will Young's numbers, while they look a lot better, if you actually delve into them and look who he scored his runs against, it's padded a little bit. But he has scored runs in the last sort of 6-9 months. Will Young. I understand that from the point of view that the World Cup is not somewhere where you go to blood people. You're taking people that are proven players who are going to win you games, but for him to actually miss out on the squad entirely, I'm actually a little bit surprised about.
My worry for you, and look, I actually don't mind the way that you've gone, and I'm probably the lone voice in that Slack channel, I think. I know we've got a lot of Will Young stock on the podcast, but
yeah, we do.
I think in terms of, I think your comment, Stu, was that, I can't believe that he wasn't, that Will Young's in ahead of Finn Allen. I've probably got a little take on it in two parts. Number one, I hope it isn't because they're worried about Kane and they're looking at who's on the depth chart for him, and they've gone, well, if he doesn't make it, or we don't think he's going to be fit for 3 or 4 games, and that means Young's going to get his chance maybe batting in that top,
I actually think it's the reverse. I actually think it signals that they think Kane is fit, right? Because the replacement players that they've, I guess I would say are on the bench are Chapman and Neesham, probably in the batting sense, and I would think they slot in further down the order. So I would say that signals that they think Kane is a good chance, if not to be fit for that first game, to be fit pretty soon after. And I think if it so happened that Kane wasn't fit, maybe Mitchell would go up to 3 and Latham would go up to 4, and those other guys would slot down.
So I think that was my first point, was I hope it isn't for that reason. And my second point was I don't think it is. And I think what we've got to look at is we get a little bit carried away with T20 cricket and needing all of those explosive players. If you look at someone like Devon Conway, yes, he's relatively early into his one-day international career. He's only played 20 games. But then when you actually look, even the England side that won the World Cup in 2019, they've only played something like 33 games since then or something like that. But he's averaging 50 in one-day international cricket. He's striking nearly 90. You've got Daryl Mitchell, who's a similar amount of games into his international career, striking at 96. You've got obviously then Kane. You've got Will Young. You've got Phillips, who is going to provide some of that, explosive play, and Latham as well, who against spin and particularly has been very, very impressive over the past sort of 18, 24 months. So I think that's New Zealand's game plan in terms of the cattle that they would like on the pitch and that they think are going to be successful in India. So look, time will tell whether that's the right decision. I'm sure we'll come on to the Harry Brook conversation, which is a pretty similar one for England as well. But yeah, I don't think you can grumble too much with the way that they've gone from a batting lineup perspective.
No, you're right. I guess that leads me to my next question. I'll ask you, Stu. What does that top 6 actually look like? Because one of those guys has to miss out. You'd assume Conway's in, you'd assume Kane Williamson's in, so that's 1, 3, and Latham at 5. So then you've got Will Young.
I think it's simple, actually. Will Young opens, Mitchell bats 4, Phillips bats 6, and I think that they will. I think the question is whether they try and somehow manufacture Santner not batting at 7. And if you look back to the 19 World Cup, now I'm sort of doubting myself, but I'm sure Neesham was in there at 7. I may now be wrong thinking about it, but I guess it was because we didn't have Sodhi in the lineup all the time, so we didn't have 2 spinners. But now, because I guess that is probably when I look at that top 6, I think that's great. Like, that is a really, yes, Will Young's a question. Will Young, he seems to look like he's going to get runs every single innings. Yeah. Like, even that first ODI, he's going along nicely, 20 odd, and then just, I don't know, it was a pretty good nut from Adil Rashid, nice leg spinner, but he seemed to miss it by a long way and get bowled. Second game, he gets 30 odd, looking really nice, gets run out. So he just seems to get starts and then get out. It doesn't quite kick on, and I guess that's that. I think we were saying this 6 months ago when they were in Pakistan and he was getting his opportunities then. But Will Young aside, I think that top 6 is very, very strong. Santner, I think, can do the job at 7. Baldy's always very worried about Ashton Agar and mentions him very regularly as being a player who's one's half a spot too high sometimes in lineups. But you get past there, and we've seen in this series against England when Santner is the one either left with the tail or the one that gets out, Sodhi, Southey, Ferguson, Henry, Boult, yes, they can all swing the willow, but they can all crumble quite quickly as well. So I guess whether they try and weaken the bowling to bring in a Neesham or a Chapman or someone like that will probably be the question.
Chapman, I'm a massive fan of Mark Chapman. Do you think that obviously it was a call made on balance? Do you think that's the right call to take him ahead of another batsman, maybe?
Well, I think they've gone. Yeah, I think they've gone with him instead of Finn Allen, right? I think if you look at when I think about that squad as a whole, probably the two most unlucky players when I look at it are Finn Allen and Adam Milne. Adam Milne, I think probably, I do wonder if that injury that he's now got and the fact that he just hasn't been able to stay fit for a long enough time over, tournaments and certainly one day, New Zealand domestic seasons, he hasn't really been able to do it for such a long time now, whether that counted against him. But I think that probably Chapman adds, if you're talking about a bench player, a guy who's going to come in, and be able to fit a number of roles, Chapman makes more sense to me than Allen, because Allen can be an opener, right? I don't think he can come in and play any other roles. Whereas Mark Chapman, if he comes into the team, he could come in and bat 3, he could come in and bat 4, 5, 6, could come in and do any of those roles. So I think, yes, if we're thinking Kane Williamson and all these other guys are going to stay fit the whole time, which is what we want and what we hope, what the coaching staff I'm sure hopes, then Chapman, to me, makes the most sense to be there.
In terms of that batting lineup, and we'll come on to the bowlers in a sec as well, I'm just really keen, we've talked quite a lot, I think, about, Bordy often uses this, I know I do at times as well, say someone's a good 7.5, and I think you can get away with that in T20.
Absolutely.
And okay, you might lose a game as a result of that. In ODIs, though, I think, England have batted, for example, someone like Chris Wokes as high as 7, which is definitely half a spot too high. Where do you think those kind of balance conversations are? Is it going to be matchup based, do you think, lineup based, where you need players against spin, etc.? Which routes are you going to look at? What are the permutations? Because you've got 6 nailed on batters, probably a choice to make at 7, and then we'll come on to the bowlers, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You can chime in if you want here, Raj, as well, but I think it'll be very simple. I think they will just go with Santner. I just think for the balance of the side and the way we want to do things, that top 6, yes, Mitchell can bowl a few overs, yes, Phillips can bowl a few overs, but I don't think they'll want to have to trust those guys to come in and do the job. And the same with Neesham, even to come in and say Neesham comes in and bats 7 and he can bowl a few overs, it weakens your bowling lineup pretty significantly, because you've either got to leave out Sodhi or you've got to leave out one of the 3/4 seamers that I think they're going to have a hard time squeezing into 3 already.
And this is the thing, right? We talk about data-driven decisions. It's essentially a money ball equation here. We need 300 runs, and we need bowlers that can bowl 50 overs at under 6 runs per over. I think that our biggest weakness is that last 10 overs. Who is going to bowl 10 overs at under 6s consistently? And that's why that, 7.5, that makeup is a bit tricky for the New Zealand side. It's a lot different for, the Indians, the Australians, who seem to just have those players who can do all of that. But it is a conundrum. I don't know the way to go for that. But yeah, money ball.
I saw some stats on average scores at all of New Zealand's grounds, and there is a couple where it's up at that 300 range, but a lot of them were in the 230s, 240s, 250 kind of range as well. And, recent pitches that I've seen in India and in ODIs, certainly when New Zealand went over there, they were 380 pitches, some of them that we played on. So I think it could go a number of different ways. But I also think if we look back to that 2019 World Cup, that's what everyone said, right? The 350 World Cup or whatever it was, and it just never happened. New Zealand said, okay, we're going to play our not necessarily conservative style of...
But a 260, 280
game. We're going to put runs on the board, or we're going to back ourselves to get whatever you get, and we're just going to go and play our game, and it worked incredibly well. And I think that's probably what they're thinking again. We're going to try and bring in our best bowlers, and our batters will just have to trust our batters to do the job.
Let's come on to the bowlers. So Trent Boult, returned in game 2. We've talked a lot about who the New Zealand top 3 seamers are. Lockie Ferguson's going to be captain in the side, isn't he? I think in this Bangladesh series. I caught as well a brief radio interview this week with Tim Southey. And look, this is probably a broader point, but he said, Trent choosing when he's going to play, as I think he said, put a cat amongst the pigeons. I just want to throw that out there just to wind you boys up.
I think they're very good friends, so I don't think there's too much hard feelings there.
But in terms of those three seamers, Carl Jamieson's obviously come back in for this series as well. Hasn't looked, he's looked short of a gallop, hasn't he? Really?
And he missed out on the squad. He's not there. So,
but who are the guys that you think of those three? And we talked about Milne. Obviously not in the squad. Who do you think is the guy that might come in, or do you think they've got 2 or 3 options when inevitably you'll get an injury through this tournament with the format of it? You would have thought.
I think if Milne's fit, he'll be the one that's on the bench and over on the, whether it's non-travelling reserve or travelling reserve or whatever it is. But I mean, what do you think about this third seamer? Because I think Henry and Boult in my head are just absolutely locked in. Boult 100%. You saw him come back in that game within 2 or 3 overs. He's got rid of Bairstow. He's got rid of Root. He's got rid of Stokes. Stokes kind of helped him out quite a bit on that last shot. But, I think you even look, I said to Raj before, you look at his numbers, 100 ODIs, he's got 190 wickets. Regardless of how long he's spent outside of the New Zealand squad in recent times, he's, if not the number one white ball bowler in the world, he's very, very close to that. He's in the conversation. Henry's done a great job as well. I'm a little bit biased towards, I think Ferguson's been struggling. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I want your perspective, because I do think he offers he's offered something different than what Southey can do. And even in that first ODI, he ran in, he bounced out a wicket, kind of just something that we don't have if we don't play him. So I think that's probably the toughest call.
Yeah, I mean, just on Boult, just before I answer that question, it was really good to see him back. I'm going to overlook the contract stuff for now. It is a bit of a thorn in my side. I'd really hate to see that. But it was great to see him back, and he's clearly head and shoulders sort of ahead of the pack at the moment. Henry has done the job for a long time now, so I think you're right there with 1 and 2. With Southey, for me, he's a clear 3. He's the clear 3rd for me, mainly because we just talked about that Moneyball approach. He is going to give you consistent results. He may go every now and then, get hit, but he is generally going to give you that 40 runs, 45 runs, 1 or 2 wickets, and sometimes he may even come off with a few more wickets. Then I feel like there's a little bit of a gulf. Then you've got the whole Ferguson and Milne, and then there's a real drop off after that, I think, in terms of our seamers. But you're right, Ferguson has looked to be struggling. There was a time maybe 24 months ago where he was really, really on top of his game, bowling quick, bowling really, really aggressively and taking wickets. That is not what's happening at the moment.
No, not at all. Yeah, look, I think, to finish, put a bow on that sort of New Zealand stuff, and when we'll let you chat a bit here, Binksy, about England, because they've got a few questions to answer as well. But yeah, I think the only worry I have about Southey is the stuff that you mentioned before, bowling at the death, because I do think that's a challenge for him now, the way he's going. Yes, he's very smart, he's been able to adapt his game, but yeah, that's probably the one area as well that I'm the most scared about for New Zealand's bowling attack, and I think they're going to have to get creative to try and work out how they get those last 10 get through those last 10 overs without too much damage. Binksy, England, questions to answer. Liam Livingstone was someone you kind of mentioned last week in terms of in our Harry Brook conversation. Maybe Livingstone is sort of Livingstone, Milan. There are Roy, there are a few other people that you were saying, okay, if Brook is going to come in, these are actually the kind of people that we should start thinking about that might be able to drop out. You even mentioned the bowlers, who the more I look at that squad, the more I think England do have a lot of bowlers in there. Livingstone's, like quite a few people that we mentioned last week, has come through, absolutely delivered in these last couple of ODIs. I think he's kind of nailed down his spot now as a pretty important cog in that England lineup.
And is his bat regulation size?
The ball does go a long way.
Seems to come off.
Yeah, if that's what you're clinging to, you carry on. Look, I think no one's really nailed down still for me the argument. Jason Roy missed the last game with, I think, a back spasm. David Milan was off on paternity leave, so he didn't get a chance to kind of really advance his cause, but obviously scored 50 in the first game. I think he's on the plane. His record over the last 12 months, I really don't think you can argue too much about that.
He looked a bit shaky in the first couple of overs in that game, and then just started crunching it. And I kind of thought for a minute there New Zealand was thinking we'd rather bowl to Milan in the World Cup than Brook, so we'll just give him a few wide half volleys and get him into form.
Yeah, well, maybe that's been the plan for the last 18 months, as he's ranked in the top 10 in both white ball formats. So look, I think no one's really nailed that batting spot down. It'll be interesting to see. The game is on Wednesday night, the next game, and then I think Sunday is the final game of this series. Friday, sorry, I think is the final game of the series, the 15th. And I think that there needs to be someone that takes that opportunity, probably Jason Roy if he's fit again, because otherwise there's got to be some questions if someone like Harry Brook does actually come in and score some runs, either in that game or through the Island series, where I believe he's going to play a little bit of a part in that. The interesting thing for me, and look, it's difficult because it was a rain-reduced game, obviously that second one-day international, was Livingstone didn't get a bowl and Adil Rashid was rested. So if you look at England, if they're going to play two spinners and get through close to 20 overs of two spinners, it's probably going to be Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali as the first two. So the fact that Livingstone didn't bowl, I've just got a question mark around how much he will bowl in that tournament. And then the question is really, which is the better batting option out of Harry Brook, Jason Roy, and probably Liam Livingstone, if that's the route that they're gonna go. I think interesting as well that Harry Brook's opened the batting as well. That that I think they're trying to manufacture potentially a way to get him into that squad.
Do you think that they're holding much? Like, how much sway, both of you? Like, even recent performances from Finn, for example, and Harry Brook. So he was going great in those first couple of T20s. Since then, I think he's struggled quite a bit. He's got 8, 4, 25, 2 in his last 4 digs. These guys have played for been around the scene for 12 months. Do we think that these last 2 weeks are actually making an impact or not? Is it mainly these guys have their names on the piece of paper and only an extraordinary performance would sway it?
I think Harry Brook has forced his way in. Based on his performances since the team got named, the preliminary team. With Finn Allen, I'm not sure about the New Zealand one. I think Harry Brook might be like an outlier. I think it's more likely that it hasn't actually affected it. The Finn Allen one confuses me a little bit. It's a bit like a high school romance. There's a few mixed messages there. He's still opening the batting, but he can't make the World Cup side. Harry Brook, yes. The others, no, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't really know about Finn Allen. Harry Brook, I'd say, I think on potential, absolutely. On stats, no, he's 5 one-day internationals in. He averages 20. His list A record is pretty similar. And I think England have done one thing over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, or if they've done one thing over the last 2 or 3 years, it's shown loyalty to players that have got them to where they've got them. So I personally think Jason Roy is someone that Joss Butler's looking at as one of his experienced players. The thing that probably goes against Jason Roy is, he wasn't picked up in the IPL at the start of the tournament. He did come in as a late replacement.
Yeah, and did all right.
So I think, the fact that he's got a bit of experience in India is going to be helpful. So look, I think that Harry Brook might struggle despite the press clamouring for him to be there. And then from a bowling perspective, look, I really have no idea. Gus Atkinson, I think, is the one that I think has burst onto the scene and grabbed that opportunity. But then we've also seen some really, really good glimpses from David Willey as well, both with bat and ball. And he was unlucky to miss out on that 2019 squad for Jofra Archer. And at the moment, he's probably doing enough to certainly ease his way ahead of maybe the other left-arm seamer that's in the squad, Topley. I think Curran will go clearly. So I think that might be a conversation between between Topley and David Willey, and Willey obviously offers a lot more with the Willow.
Adil Rashid, you're a massive fan of Adil Rashid. Do you see a scenario in this World Cup where they play Livingstone and Ali because they can bat down to 9-10 with those guys on the side and cover 20 overs of spin?
No. Yeah, I think Adil Rashid has got something like 10 first-class hundreds. I think he's quite capable of batting at 9 or 10, and he can clear the rope. So I think if we're worrying about whether he offers us something at number 9, we've got bigger problems in that side. So the only thing I think that might see them play Livingstone and Ali would be that Adil Rashid has had a long-standing shoulder problem. There is a lot of cricket in a relatively short space of time, so that there might be a management perspective there, and go to the bullpen for to extend our baseball analogies. Perhaps against one of the, and I'll say this, respectfully, against one of the lesser nations. But ultimately, your first two spinners, I think, are Rashid and Moeen Ali.
I think there's still space, because I was trying to work out who that England first choice bowling attack is, and I do think there probably is still space for Ali and Livingstone in there. And I think that what you're talking about, I would expect probably that 10 overs of that England bowling attack comes from a combination of Ali and Livingstone. If they decide it is just Ali, then that's fine as well. But I think you nailed down Curran. He's definitely in there. You're expecting 10 from him. You're expecting 10 from Rashid for all the reasons you just mentioned. I think if he's fit, you're expecting 10 from Wood.
Yeah.
And then is it Wokes? Is Wokes the next cab off the rank? Because then, like you said, then there's still Willie, there's still Atkinson, there's still Topley. It seems like, maybe you don't need all these bowlers if there's no way to kind of fit them in. But then England said, I think Matthew Mott said he wants to rotate all his bowlers around, right? Yeah,
look, I think there'll definitely be some rotation. I think that the thing in Wokes, again, hasn't played much IPL cricket. He's chosen to prioritise his red ball cricket. Obviously has had a knee injury as well for the past 18 months or so. The thing that Wokes offers is he is a guy with the ability to bowl in all phases of the innings. He is brilliant with the new ball if there's anything on offer. And we talked about pitches a little bit. Indian pitches have actually offered a little bit to quality seam bowling over the course of the last 2 or 3 years. So if there's anything there, he will exploit it with that white kookaburra. He can bowl in the middle overs, and he's also turned himself into a really, really good guy at the death. Bowls into the wicket, slower ball bounces, has got really good changes of pace, nails his Yorker. So look, I think he again is one that they'll show a pretty decent degree of loyalty to, particularly given he's come back into form through the Ashes series. He looks fit, he looks healthy, and he's from Birmingham. Let's move on. No Australian representation on the podcast, so we can really lay into the green and gold, as we normally do, to be honest, even when our resident Australian is here. South Africa, Australia, some talking points there. Another concussion has changed Marnus Labuschagne's career potentially.
Amazing, isn't it?
David Warner is, looking very likely to be paraded around the SCG in a limousine on his Test retirement now. And then, Baldy's asked a couple of questions as well of Ashton Agar. I think we all agree that Australia are a good side. Maybe Baldy still doesn't. And then we've also got Temba Bavuma's efforts going unrewarded as well. What do we want to say about this South Africa-Australia series?
I think we've got to talk a bit about Labuschagne, don't we? I mean, he's obviously wasn't picked in this initial 15. Concussion again, kind of bizarre. Cam Green gets concussed. Marnus comes in, scores a match-winning 80-odd. Backs it up next game as Australia pile on almost 400. Marnus scores another 100. I mean, we're talking about can guys force their way in the last couple of weeks. I think when you look at that's how you do it. You go and score a match-winning innings and then you back it up with 100. I mean, it's very compelling to now take someone like him to the World Cup. They've got to be thinking about it pretty hard.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so Steve Smith's not available for this.
Not for this series.
So he's probably taking that spot there. But look, he can't do much more, can he, than score that 80 odd and the 100 that he scored there. I'll be honest, I haven't seen the innings, but 100's 100. It sounds like he looked good. Warner, for me, is a bit more impressive when I say that because he's been under a little bit of pressure to score runs, especially at the top of the order. I like seeing him score runs as well. I know that's not a popular opinion. So I'm happy that he scored some runs, and we'll see him in India for the World Cup, hopefully.
I think the thing with Marnus, as much as, yes, I think he could, like, he's kind of forced, maybe he forces his way in here, and I think probably if he does, when I look at that squad, it'd be for Cam Green, because when we've talked at length about all these Australias all these all-rounders that Australia has, Stoinis, Maxwell's, Agar, all these other players, they probably don't need Cam Green unless he's going to be a significant. I don't think they need him as a bowler, and I don't think that he's necessarily doing enough with the bat at the moment to sort of earn his spot. You look surprised, Binksy, with that?
No, I don't necessarily look surprised. I'm just trying to look at the permutations that Australia have got. So you'd think Steve Smith obviously comes back in. Josh Inglis has probably got to go because he's the reserve gloveman, and Alex Carey, obviously the incumbent. But the conversation might be around a Tim David or a Cameron Green, and obviously
and David's not there either. So
so I think look, I think that Australia have got this. Again, we talk about India's embarrassment of riches. Australia now do have a lot of different permutations, and I think we've talked a lot about these squads that have been named. There's a lot of water to go under these bridges. I don't think any of these are inked in, so they've named the 15, but as New Zealand have England, everyone has had to do that preliminary squad or provisional squad.
When is that locked in? Is it end of this month?
End of the month. I do think for New Zealand they've kind of gone to the effort of a big announcement. People have been glowing at the social media post that they did of all the kids and grandmas and all of the stuff that have been saying, these are who the players are selected. So I do think for New Zealand that squad is pretty nailed on. But I
just
agree.
Cinder's influence, mate, is trying to get some feel good factor.
I think for these other squads that named them very early, I completely agree with you. And look, when you look at that Australian lineup, where could Labuschagne come in? Because you've got Warner, you've got Head, then Marsh bats 3, Smith bats 4, Maxwell, Stoinis. They have to pick Carey or they have to pick Inglis. So that's your top 7. I don't see how Marnus can slot into that side ahead of any of those other players unless they're really struggling.
Green's fit, he's gone, right? Like he's the future of Australian cricket. He played all right in the IPL. I know it was a bit sporadic, but when he was on, he was on.
Yeah,
he batted well, he bowled well. I would expect to see him.
And maybe that's their thinking, right? If they go, okay, well, Labuschagne, the only thing he can do is come in and be, if this is our top 7 that we're going to go with, the only thing he can do is provide batting cover, whereas Green can provide cover in a number of different areas. Not that they necessarily need millions of different more all-rounders, but he probably provides more balance to that squad than Labuschagne does. And it'd be pretty unlucky to miss out after those performances. But like you say, it's an embarrassment of riches some of these squads have.
Let's move on to South Africa. Temba Bavuma. We talked a little bit about him on the podcast, probably a couple of weeks ago now. He's got some form, 100 odd in
third, 107 ODIs, I think, this year.
Yeah, and 40 odd in the last game. So
what have the other scores been? I think the other 3 are ducks.
Well, he does have 2 ducks in the T20s, and I think 30 odd in the other one. But I guess a timely bit of form for him, particularly with the captain's armband as well.
South Africa's I just have no read on them because watching this series, they're getting absolutely destroyed. But then you look at that lineup and you can I can convince myself that they could do some damage still because of the players they have in that lineup. Quentin de Kock, Bavuma, Van der Dussen, Markram, Klaassen, Miller. That top 6 or 7, it's got a lot of experience in the IPL now. They all can score quickly. They can be threatening players. And then even Rabada, Janssen, Ngidi, Maharaj, that's a pretty good 11, but they're just not putting it together, and it's certainly not happening for them in this series.
You definitely feel like they could put it together for a one-off performance, but to go through a tournament format, you think that I feel like they're just going to struggle. Rabada, he is such a good bowler, but he doesn't look like he's in the form where he's going to take 5 wickets and grab a game by the scruff of its neck. The other one for me, why is no one talking about Aiden Makra bowling so much? Surely he's got some dirt on Hema Bavuma, and that's why he's getting so many overs.
Well, he was bowling a lot when he was in the T20s when he was captain as well. I don't think he's going to be a crucial cog to their bowling, but he seems like someone that's going to get a few overs in Indian conditions.
From a spin point of view, do you think that they are settled on the Maharaj, Shamsi, kind of? You said Maharaj there as probably your first choice.
Shamsi, I think would. Yeah, it's tough. I think it's a tough call. They might think Shamsi's the number one. I've always sort of liked Maharaj. I think he adds quite a lot, both with the ball. Obviously, can bat a little bit as well, but mainly with the ball is where I look at things. And I don't know. I just think he provides a lot of control. I think he can spin the ball. Yeah, I've always liked him, but if you look at the way that they've balanced the side the last couple of years, Shamsi's often been the white ball preferred option there. So I think there's a good chance they probably both play, but mainly because of the way some of these seamers are struggling. I mean, conditions, yes, most of these sides are probably going to look at two spinners anyway, but especially for South Africa with the way some of their seamers are going, even Rabada, who was someone that we thought was just a locked down 10 overs of quality now, he's starting to go air miles, as you might say. It's just not happening for him. I don't know what's going on with him, but even from 2 years ago when he was dominating the IPL to even the last rounds of the IPL, the stuff for South Africa now, he doesn't seem to be the bowler, like you said, that he was 12 months ago, 18 months ago.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree with Raj, and I think I'd probably just say if this was a T20 World Cup, I think South Africa would have a little bit of a chance of maybe having a little bit of a run. I think people will fancy Maharaj from a spin perspective. I think you'll see a few players dancing down the wicket and hitting him into the high veld. I think that's their weakness. That their spin options. And then, look, I still think there's a little bit of still that sort of cricketing political unrest there, isn't there? I still think there's a few skeletons in some cupboards there in terms of cricket South Africa, which can't help the players. Should we move on to the India-Pakistan Cup? Sorry, the Asia Cup. So that's going on.
Stick with it. That's what it is, isn't it? That's what it's become.
In the Super Fours, we're now into that stage. I'm not even going to attempt an explainer, but we've got people hitting form left, right, and centre. KL Rahul we talked about as a wicket-keeping option. Ishan Kishan didn't even get a bat in the last game due to his 100 and a sublime 100 from Raj's man Virat as well.
Virat, yeah. Oh, look.
Virat's a big fan of Raj. Oh no, it's actually
yeah. Oh no, I'm sure Virat's a fan as well, isn't he? Yeah. Look, I think on Rahul, full credit to him. He's come back from injury and just gone straight into 100. And I think I still think Kishan is the wicket keeping option they'll go with. I think probably what Rahul scoring those runs has probably hurts Shreyas Iyer's chances of slotting in the middle order. So
when they've named a World Cup squad, it looked as though Shreyas Iyer was going to get a bit of a run at number 4. That was the indication. I don't know. He's injured. A
back spasm.
Okay, so it's not a long term.
Are proving quite costly.
I do feel like Shreyas Iyer is sort of the choice there, the first choice at number 4. But interestingly, this has answered a question that we had with can Iyer and Kishan coexist, and it seems as though they can. Incredible sort of bottle, mental toughness to come in and score that 100 when everyone's talking about you. I'm very, very happy for KL Rahul. It's called the 100, and I still haven't seen the Virat Kohli 100, but it sounds like it was magical, so I'll have to get that on.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've said it many times. When he scores runs, it's pretty awesome to watch, isn't it? And he's going to be. I think that was his 47th ODI 100 when we did our Hall of Fame. I know you mentioned that he has that Sachin has 49, and I started seeing this is Virat's. I think Crick Info might have posted this is Virat's 47th 100. Will he by the end of the World Cup have broken Sachin's record? And look, he could. That's obviously very, very much within his grasp now. And I mean, it's astonishing to have nearly 50 ODI hundreds. It really is.
And a lot of them chasing as well, in chasing situations. So, yeah. He's pretty good, isn't he?
I think the person probably I want to highlight from we're talking about the India-Pakistan game, although that's, like you said, that's sort of that's all this Asia Cup seems to be. Although now, because Pakistan got thumped so heavily in this game, I think there's a chance that Sri Lanka can, they're relying now on Sri Lanka's results to actually qualify for the final, whereas, if they'd kept it tight, it might have changed things there. But Kuldeep Yadav is the one that I really want to highlight because, I don't know, 18 months ago, 12 months ago, he couldn't make his IPL side. Like, this is a seriously impressive turnaround from him. He's now, I don't know, they're maybe the number one spinner going into this World Cup. He would be in my books. He's the most threatening of him, Akshar, Ravi Jadeja. He's fought off Yuzvendra Chahal, who's a very good bowler, although he's had his struggles as well. He's fought off Ravi Ashwin. Embarrassment of riches. They've got loads and loads of spinners that could be in this mix. Varun as well. Loads of players that they've tried. And Yadav, I think if you read everything that people that are close to him say, they talk about the technical changes that he's made over the past sort of 3 or 4 months, maybe even before that. I'm probably not close enough, don't know enough about, haven't watched enough of him bowl to kind of comment too heavily on that, but you definitely notice the speed that he's bowling seems to be quicker. He's kind of getting through players, whereas sometimes before it seemed like he was loopy and players could dance down the wicket or get to him. Yeah. But now he seems to just be in total control of his game, and I mean, in those conditions, he could have a massive impact on this World Cup.
Yeah, and I think that the way that the Indian lineup is going to probably work out, that they've got the ability to get Ravi Jadeja and Ashwin and probably Kuldeep into the Axar into the same side if they want to as well, which I think makes such a big difference in terms of being able to play something that is a little bit different. We don't see a lot of left arm wrist spinners. Kuldeep Yadav, I think, started as a seamer as well, so maybe that's something to do with the pace that he's getting.
Ajaz did
the breaking news.
Yeah, I don't think it's breaking news. I think it's the start of his career. So, but yeah, I love watching him bowl. I really do. I love watching any leg spinner bowl, but there's a point of difference with a left arm wrist spinner that's pretty exciting to watch, particularly because he's got the wrong one as well, and you can make players look very silly bowling that wrong one from over the wicket, can't you?
Yeah, a lot of respect for Kuldeep Yadav, because he really struggled to make a Virat Kohli-led Indian side for a long time. But he's managed to work his way in there with Ravi Jadeja, with Akshar, with Ravi Ashwin sort of standing in his way. But I think that he adds a massive point of difference when we talk about data-driven decisions. We talk about matchups. Having a spinner that can turn the ball the other way to the other left-arm spinners they've got is going to be massive for India. And you're right, he's the kind of bowler who actually takes wickets. Yeah. He's not there to sort of stem the flow of runs. Yeah. He's going to go out there and he's going to get wickets. He may be a tad expensive every now and then, but if he takes 4 wickets, home and host.
Let's finish the pod on a point of levity, well, at least levity for us, as we put this in the run notes. We were talking earlier on, Raj and I both been overseas recently. We've seen the New Zealand Warriors analytics teams in various airport lounges looking at statistics and providing a massive amount of value to their on-field performance. It looks as if the Afghanistan analysts might have also been in the first class lounge, but that they were browsing Instagram, because they've come up with a bit of a DLS calamity here, haven't they?
Yeah, you got to feel for them. I mean, especially some of those guys that kind of got them to that point. They were in they had 295 they had to get in 30 odd overs, or 37.1 overs. They thought they had to chase it down, and then Rashid goes bang, 3 fours from 4 balls, and then Mujib holes out. they think it's all over, and so they just block out those 2 balls. I mean, surely the first block, someone's running out there with a sheet.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. The flashbacks all come back to Boucher, right? Boucher blocking it, which is some very happy memories and funny memories from a New Zealand point of view, not so much from South Africa.
I'm not a massive fan of laying blame, but whose fault is that? Is that because afterwards the team was sort of it's Jonathan Trott's the coach, isn't he?
Yeah.
There was some mention they weren't told that they could go past the target and how that works. Do you think they should have got some direction there from the sheets that they run out saying you need to get it by this, but if you go past the score, you can do it in this many balls? Do you think that comes from the ICC, or that's something that they have to unpack themselves?
So I'm pretty sure you get the Duckworth-Lewis sheets at the innings break, so you know exactly
get them in the media box, don't you?
You get them in the media box. You can make paper planes out of them and all sorts. So,
but I'm not sure it went past. If you know what I mean, it didn't go past. If you get 295.
Yeah. So I think that look, I don't know what their hierarchy is, and I don't know what their risk matrix looks like, Raj, but someone must have responsibility for interpretation of the rules. I think there would have been a robust conversation somewhere in that backroom stuff. I don't necessarily think you can put it on the players. That they need to be. They need to know that there's a game situation unfolding, but they need to be unencumbered to deliver the output that's required to get the runs or wickets that are needed to get ahead of that permutation. So absolutely, that's a part of the analytics staff, in my view. Maybe it's the same as what we all encounter at home. They couldn't get the printer to connect to the Wi-Fi, and they just couldn't get they couldn't get the printout. They were there. They were filling up their ink cartridges. They were doing the reset. Installing the firmware,
turning it on and off.
Yeah,
turn it on and off.
All that kind of stuff. Well, look, hopefully we don't see that in the tournament proper. And I think that is the end of the pod for this evening. We'll obviously be back next week. We'll wrap up the series that are going on. We've also got our World Cup preview show coming up as well, and then plenty, not only in the lead up to that tournament, but plans to record throughout the course of this one-day international World Cup.
Already shifted to the white ball stuff, white ball shirts.
Already shifted. But for now, that is good night and God bless from us all here in Auckland. We'll hopefully be back as a 4-ball next week with Michael in the room. But for now, it is good night. God bless. We'll see you soon. Good night.